Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, welcome to Change Agents Hall of Fame radio show. Tonight, our title, Platitudes Create Attitudes, picks up on a point from the previous The Course in Miracles connection, where we began discussing the idea of how cults use platitudes, spiritual platitudes, as a way to disrupt critical thinking, all with the purpose of healing the mind. When you deconstruct a lot of these sayings, which are said to be simple truths or truisms, they often say nothing. For instance, the CIM texts have such statements for contemplation as miracles restore the mind to its fullness, projection makes perception. All this complexity is but a desperate attempt to recognize the problem and therefore not let it be resolved. The premise for all of it is that perception, meaning all perception, is distorted to begin with and can be healed by their methods of seeing. All spiritual paths have an element of faith and belief in the intangible to them. But when there is no way to question or test a statement through existential processes, these are just pat statements and you can't really develop your own spirituality through these things. Good evening, Bravo.
Hi, Linda. Good evening. Yes, very interesting what you're saying. Platitudes seem to be empty on the inside at one point, and yet full of explosivity or volcanic activity also on the inside, meaning that nothing is symbolic. These platitudes seem to be empty, but the words seem to be cliches if you look at them with critical thinking, and yet they are they linger, and they link you to a lineage that you perhaps know nothing about. And most of these platitudes were created, as we have seen through our past exploration of social movements, that most of these platitudes were created just to be these simplistic voices of remembrance, so you would not forget. And again, they link us to unseen and hidden power. They link us to an agenda that those people who first set out to mind change attitudes wanted us to be linked to. And as you've pointed out, Linda, when we've talked about this topic, when you link to these platitudes, when you accept their symbols, you merge on the astral level with all the other people who have taken these same vows and gone along with this same ritual activity. You're psychically linked to them. And that's why it is so hard for people to extricate themselves from groups. It's not only the physical daily routines of a group that they miss, but it's the psychically area that they find themselves entrapped and ensnared in. And if they are mystery schools or courses in miracles or Freemasonic movements, perhaps you are linked to agents for dark power, for sure.
Well, they seem to be all based on the way mystery schools and mystery cults operate in terms of developing their own vocabulary that only people on the inside can understand, and ritualistic behavior and initiation, which you've talked about before. And we came up with this idea about the power of words in relation to being bonded to psychic bodies, being bonded psychically, being linked psychically with a type of corporation or corporate body that exists in the invisible world, and also linking with all the people who have ever also linked with that same body. And we talked about this in relation to secret societies and occult societies and esoteric societies and Masonic societies, and which say that their initiations and their rites are all on a symbolic level, but they are really very serious in the sense that you are taking a vow. I mean, Masons take a blood oath to these things, and they are hard to, as you said, extricate yourself from. And there are many reasons why, because these types of initiatory practices and liturgies that they have during their ceremonies and focuses and meditations and practices, they open up your central nervous system and your consciousness to all of these types of energies that they want to
energetic
bring
patterns,
in.
we call them. Yes.
Yes, those patterns, yes.
Yes, and they have purposely designed these energetic patterns, yes.
Right.
In order to bring in, quote-unquote, their stuff.
Right, and not just bring it into the world as an element or an elemental force, but to bring it into people, into their, body-mind complex. So,
and Linda, maybe...
Go ahead.
Well, no, I think maybe we can give an example of what we're talking about now. Perhaps would be a good spot to describe maybe one energetic pattern that they have purposely worked to create within us all, in a way. I mean, this is probably the biggest cult, and that every single one on the planet is a member of this cult, and every single one on the planet has, in some ways, partaken and of the ritual to become a member. And I think that energy pattern we're talking about is sex energy. And this has been co-opted, this natural fertility energy pattern that exists to create our communities and our bonds between people and our continuation as a species. This natural, healthy urge has been co-opted, and they are using sex energy to propel their wagon, their labyrinth. And I think they stir up...
Yes. All of the mystery religions or the mystery cults that we're talking about that are linked to these type of societies and these practices, they go back to ancient sex cults, basically, that worshipped, not accepted as a natural part life, but worshipped the reproductive principle in nature. They worship the generative principle and regeneration. And
the G in Masonic symbolism is for generation, for this, what you're talking about.
Right, because of this very worship of that principle of reproduction and the energy behind that principle. And the sex cults worshipped the sex force, or what some people would call the Kundalini force, the serpent power. What in esoteric knowledge is the liquid light of sex that is raised from the base of the spine and snakes its way up the spine. And this is the energy that all occultists seek to work
and
with
it's called
and
Kundalini.
to manipulate. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there is no other power that they seek, really.
So
no
from Crowley
what
to the Masons
to...
This is what they're after.
Right. They are after that power.
The whole point of pornography, Linda? To stir up these sexual forces? In some twisted way?
Well, I don't know if it's the point of pornography or if it's a side effect, a sideways. The thing about stirring up forces is that things often, as they say, go sideways, which means they leak out in very unpredictable and chaotic ways. That is the consequence of
this is a
trying to work with powerful forces. So it creates an imbalance.
So you think this incredible pornographic tsunami that has taken over the Western world is just a byproduct of this stirring up of the Kundalini sex energy?
Well, it is. It's a byproduct only in the sense that it's not planned on a linear level, but it really is a reflection and a manifestation of over-focusing on this certain type of energy and also this certain type of force that we are talking about and these ancient mystery cults and sex cults. A lot of the rites associated with them, I mean, I'm not an expert on the ancient mystery religions, and I can't say that all of them had this and all of them worship this way, but, a lot of them, part of the ritual practices was to have sex with prostitutes, with temple prostitutes, and that also included children. And children were used in a lot of their sex rites. So I wouldn't say it's merely a byproduct, but I would say, pornography is, a result of, a heavy focus on this type of practice and this type
and these mystery cults. Mm-hmm. Yes, and just to back up what you're saying, these mystery cults were lived and thrived for some time in the Western culture in both patriarchal and matriarchal dominant societies, meaning when the males ruled the communities and also when the females ruled. And there is archaeological and historical evidence that has shown that both when the male and the female, both of them were in power, this kind of exploitation took place. I know there is a woman researcher who's done work on matriarchal societies that have had these male prostitutes and children, male children. So it's interesting how both have got caught up into this.
Yes, I don't think there's a very strong, gender barrier in terms of everyone that was caught up in this type of practice and worship. One thing, though, is that the Masonic religion, the Masonic worship, the Masonic ideal it's a worship of the male organ. And, it's very phallic. I mean, they also need the goddess regenerative principle in order to make their mojo work, so to speak. But it is heavily weighted on phallic symbology.
So this is for the domination for the patriarchal.
Yes. I don't know how much we want to get into this, but a lot of the, the Masonic journey is couched in the symbolism of Isis and Osiris, and of course Osiris was dismembered, murdered and dismembered, and then Isis searched for all the different parts of his body and found all of them except his male member. And so basically the Masonic order in a lot of ways is a tribute to the search for the lost member of Osiris, believe it or not.
Yeah, I don't even know where to go with that.
To go with that,
at all.
Right.
Yeah, I mean perhaps I can add only a kind of personal experience with this stirring up the sexual forces. I believe, of course, it's only speculation, but it's deeply embedded in me as a truth. I think I was there at one of the moments when the sexual energy began to propel the Leviathan that is now our global society. And it was a profound moment, and I was a little boy, 10, 11 years old, and I had a paper route. And I was collecting the money from the people I delivered the newspapers to on my bike, and I was going through the neighborhoods. And I went to a woman's house, and she took her time. It was an old woman. I remember waiting, and she took her time, and she brought me the money. And then I rode out of her street onto Western Road, a little busy street, not too busy, and I was on the sidewalk, and I stopped. And at that moment, I felt the world change. I immediately felt an explosion. And again, being 10 or 11 years old, I had a moment where a very adult thought. I said, sex was everywhere, even in the air. And that was, I can remember, on my gold Stingray bike, banana seat, sissy bar, I put my feet down on the sidewalk and thought, everywhere there is sex. And where that thought came from, some kids, they, sometimes can say things that are really profound. I know that with my daughter. Even when she was, 4 or 5 years old, she would say very profound, insightful things, reading people's emotions and reading my emotion. I've seen that. And I think I was reading the emotion of the world because it was really a shock, and I felt reality changed at that moment. I think that this sex energy was really it really had taken charge of the air. And then from then on, that moment has only come true. I think everything that we do is related to this sex energy in culture. I mean, it's behind everything. It's the be-all and end-all of most people's lives, unfortunately, in this global society of anti-community. This is the goal of things. And I can remember that moment. And didn't know what was happening, but
it was a moment when you felt that the sexual force that we are speaking of tonight was so overwhelmingly prevalent.
Yeah, I think it kind of, when I say I didn't know what was happening, I didn't know where the source was. There was a change, but I didn't know where it was coming from. All I knew is that this sex energy, this stirring up the forces, had won and had somehow from that house where I took the money from the old woman to going out in the street and up in that, 2 or 3 minutes only, I felt the world had been given over, perhaps, or had been radiated with almost at the cellular level, at the atomized level, with this Kundalini force. I think something was released. And I didn't have the capacity to understand that in an intellectual or critical thinking. That was just a feeling of a kid who, very intuitive and very, very intuitive, and was feeling this unseen hidden power. And I think it was merging in the physical realm. We've talked about, or you've read about this Parsons, the engineer out at JPL Labs in California, and Aleister Crowley opening up portals to demons and these kind of things. And I don't know if they are true stories or not, but they could be symbols of something opening up and a pattern taking over, as we've talked about, of this energetic
they
pattern.
Were trying to bring a lot through, and a lot of those forces did have to do with the Masonic ideal of, the sexual force.
And I think that and to kind of finish that story as a symbol, a different kind of symbol, I rejected that. I knew there was something anti-human, really maybe anti-sex, to what was being fed into us, which was it was absorbing into us. And I knew it was opposite of the sun, and I knew it was opposite of the trees, and I really began to feel that it had made the color of the world. It was the opposite. You know how they colorize black and white film? Well, this energy that they had leaked as if they were making a tattoo into the body. This was taking the color out of the world. And I began to see in the towns when I would ride my bike, and I would start to notice how the leaves weren't as green as before. And there was a physical change. And again, that was where I noticed people's faces began to change. I remember being in my town and being on the downtown, and it was around Christmas time where you expect, or at least I expected, people to be a little happier in the face. And I remember seeing the faces in the cars that drove by, and I was shocked by the they weren't wearing their masks, their politically correct masks, and there was meanness behind in those cars. And that struck me as much as it struck this on my bike, feeling this change in the reality. And I think that those are both linked. I think when this force came in, it changed the energetic patterns of that people use. People need to live healthy lives, psychically healthy lives. And I think that this cut us off from special, unseen life energy, is what I believe comes from the sun. And that has put a block between us and the sun. And I could see things lose their color, lose their radiance in the good sense. And I could see in those faces and in the environment, I could see the beauty of the world diminishing. And again, at 10, 11, or 12 years old, that is, I could feel that. I couldn't articulate it. I think it's only in the last few years that I can begin to articulate that. But that was real at a real level. And I was witnessing and observing and being in the middle of it, a great, great change. And I think if we can pinpoint that time in my life, at that age, you will see that around that time, all of these really hardcore music cults and these memes from the social engineers are really impacting the culture. So I think all of these things are, the portal was released, I'm sure. Something came through. And then there were these movements that the human being and our world of beauty really was gravely wounded. And I think only the sun can redeem that or heal that wound.
Well, I've also suggest the pornographic worldview, because it is a worldview, does drain the beauty out of everything, and it is anti-life because, pornography really isn't about sexuality. It's about power and control and obsession and things like that, things that aren't really about having a balanced human life.
Yes, and it's an energetic pattern that is set in steel in our Western culture, with certain platitudes that keep it in that way, such as free love and get what you can get during the day and do what feels good, and these other platitudes that have locked us into not questioning if there was a change in the world. Something to think about.